everyone, welcome to my channel, Babbling Books. If this is your first time here, my name is Elaine, and thank you for clicking on my video. So this is my March wrap-up. I had a pretty good reading month. I read 12 books, and 5 of which were on audio. The first few weeks, I just read so many books, and towards the end of the month, my 2 youngest, they had their birthdays are 2 days apart. So we had their party, and planning it and all that took up time. And then about 3 days later, the whole family, like dominoes, just took turns getting sick. So I fell pretty far behind in a lot of housework and errands. So that's why it took so long to film this video. But to the books I read. So I started out really strongly, and I read Piranesi by Susanna Clark. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. After I read it, I watched some videos and I read a few Goodreads reviews. And it seems to be a book that people either love or hate. And I could kind of see that because you're introduced to this world and you're just thrown right in it. You have no knowledge of how, why, where, when, none of those things. And you sort of have to just go on this journey with the narrator, Piranesi, who's sort of like this naturalist introducing you to his world. And that world consists of this massive house that never seems to end. It's just full of these hallways, and there's just an unknown number of them. And the home contains bodies of water and animal life and these massive statues, and some of which are, human-sized and larger. And you have to just go on this exploration and let the author reveal the how, why, when, and where to you when the author is ready. And that should cut down a lot on the frustration with this book. But I just enjoyed the journey. I really enjoyed the narrator. I just thought it was wonderful, and it just had this fantastical feeling and fantasy that I just really loved, and it was very unique. So I do highly recommend it. And yeah, if anybody wants to recommend a book to me that is sort of like Piranesi, I would love to hear about it because I enjoyed it that much. And then after that, I read The Bitch in the House, which is an essay collection, 26 essays of women exploring sex and relationships and marriage and motherhood. I did enjoy about 70% of these collections, of these essays. The first essay especially focused on why it is that females, the wife, the mother, seems to take on the majority of her family's, the family responsibility, whether she works or she doesn't work outside of the home. And that really resonated with me. I call it being the frontal lobe for the entire family. I have to remember things for everyone. I have to think about things that my husband wouldn't even occur to him to do. So like I said, a lot of these did resonate with me, but there was no diversity in this book. The entire book was upper middle class, straight, white, mostly had sort of a suburban, a little bit of urban feel to it, but there was no diversity. So this collection of essays could have been so much better if it had been more well-rounded. And for that reason, I would not recommend this particular book if you are looking for essay collections about the lives of women. And then after that, I read, I have to look at my little notes here. After that, I read The Mormonizing of America, how the Mormon religion became a dominant force in American politics, pop culture, and entertainment by Stephen Mansfield. So I didn't know much of anything about Mormonism, but I've always found it kind of interesting, and I came across this book at the library, and it was a good introduction into Mormonism, but I had a few issues with it. The author in the foreword states that he takes great care to be a middle-of-the-road, non-judgmental, author, and I didn't find that to be accurate. So the author took the liberty to poke fun at a lot of the Mormon doctrines, and especially the history of how Mormonism was founded. And I'm not going to lie, there were a few times where I chuckled because it was funny. But when you're reading a nonfiction book, you're relying on the author to be impartial and to be factual. And when you start to question whether or not the author is in fact impartial, it sort of throws the entire book's accuracy into question. I will say it seemed like a good introduction into the founding of Mormonism, how Mormonism functions, and Mormon doctrines. Like I said, I didn't know anything about Mormonism, but I found the book entirely approachable. I didn't feel lost. But what was interesting was the author's claim that Mormonism, the fundamental parts of Mormonism, the way they expect their members to live their lives and to behave, produces high-functioning, very overachiever adults. The majority of them, at least according to the author, they want higher education, they're entrepreneurs, they're in politics, and they're just very high-functioning, overachieving, I'm going to use the term overachieving, adults. So I found that to be very interesting, and the author was able to make a case for how Mormonism leads to that. Now, of course, I don't want to do a blanket statement by saying if a person is Mormon, they by default are these high-functioning overachievers, because that's not true. But according to the author, that is true for the majority. I found that to be very interesting. I do think if you really want to dig in to Mormonism and to truly study all the aspects of it, there is a better book out there for you. But this one seemed like a pretty good introduction. But go into it knowing that I think the author, there was some levity in the book that I was not expecting. And then after that, I read another book that's been all over booktube, and that is The Need by Helen Phillips. So, another book that people either seem to love or to hate. So when I started reading this, I knew that it was about a mother who was home alone with her two young children. And she starts to suspect that there is someone or something in her home. And it's like she sees it out of the corner of her eye, but when she turns, there's nothing there. And it's just like this feeling. And as you're reading it, you have this eerie, creepy feeling the same way the character is, the mom. And then that really drew me in. And then the reveal happened, and it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was interesting. And it, kept my attention. But I thought the ending was poor. I'm not one of those people who necessarily thinks that an ending will make or break a book. But in this case, the ending seems so integral to the plot that when I didn't like it, the whole book suffered. But up until the ending, I thought the book was amazing. But I would have to say at this point, 3.5, 4-star rating. I mean, I really enjoyed the majority of it enough to give it a 4-star, but I really want to take off another half a star for the ending. But I do recommend that you read it because a lot of people did love it. And like I said, I'm glad I read it. So I do recommend it, but I really would have liked to see a different ending. And then after that, I read a memoir called Escape by Carolyn Jessop. So this is a memoir of a woman who was raised and then married into the FLDS church. And that is the Fundamentalist Church of the Latter-day Saints. So this is like a sect of Mormonism of Latter-day Saints that still practice polygamy. So Carolyn was 18 when, and this is all like on the cover, I'm not spoiling anything if you can spoil a memoir. She was 18 when she married a man who already had 3 wives, and he was 30 years older than her. So it focuses, the majority of the book does focus on her time as a wife. And then it follows to her escape with her 8 children. I found a lot of the content in this book to be shocking, and it wasn't because of, like, there are little to no details about, like, the rotation of her husband through all of his wives' beds. There was nothing like that, nothing salacious. But their day-to-day life was nothing like I expected it to be. They seemed to live like barely above the poverty line, which I found to be really shocking. What was expected of her as a wife, some of it was a bit surprising. I thought Carolyn, I was pretty amazed at the things that she was able to achieve both throughout her marriage and then afterwards. So I really do recommend it. If you're interested in polygamy, it was a pretty good, interesting book. If you're interested in the FLDS church, it's a pretty good book. Carolyn, her group of the FLDS church was associated with Warren Jeffs. So if that's something that you're interested in, this is a good book for that. If you just want to read about a strong woman who decided that her life needed massive changes and that she needed to make these changes for her children, this is a really good book. So yeah, I do recommend that one. I enjoyed it. And I have a few other books, memoirs about other polygamous wives that I intend to read sometime this year. And then after that, I read The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. So Pride and Prejudice is one of my all-time favorite books. I reread it pretty frequently. And because of that, I don't think I was able to enjoy this book as much as I would have liked to. The plot of Pride and Prejudice is basically the first quarter to a third of The Other Bennet Sister. So you're seeing the same plot, you're reading about the same plot, but it's from Mary's perspective, which added a few little interesting tidbits. And what I really thought was cool was some of the things that Mary noticed about Elizabeth, her viewpoint of some of Elizabeth's actions was nothing I'd ever thought of before. So that was pretty interesting. But because the beginning of The Other Bennet Sister is the same plot as Pride and Prejudice, it was really hard to focus and for the book to hold my attention. But once the Pride and Prejudice plot ended and it was just 100% Mary's story, I loved it. I really enjoyed watching Mary's transformation. I liked that she was not Lydia, she was not Kitty, she was not Jane, she was not Lizzie, she was Mary. And I really enjoyed that. If you are a fan of Jane Austen or if you just enjoy historical fiction, this is a really great book. And I do recommend it. But I really wish that the beginning of the book, had been a little bit stronger, I guess. I don't know. I think this might have been a case if it's me and not the book. And then after that, I listened to books 10, 11, 12, and 13 of the Hannah Swensen Bakery Cozy Mysteries. I'm done with this series. I'm absolutely done with this series. I am so tired of the love triangle. I'm so tired of the main character's patronizing attitude. The author seriously needs an overhaul. Her books feel incredibly outdated. The way they handle intimate relationships, like, there's like, I don't even think the word sex is ever used. And it's almost like you, as a reader, you feel like these characters would be ashamed of knowing anybody was having sex outside of marriage. And I find that really off-putting. And like, there's a couple of scenes where they're being judgy about what a woman is wearing. So like I said, they just feel really outdated and old school, and I'm just really tired of them. And I really hope that Joanne Fluke's, her more recent novels in this series, I really hope that they are more with the times with this, rather than being so judgmental. I'm just done with this series. And then after that, I listened to Pride and Prejudice on audiobook. After I finished the other Bennet sister, I just really wanted to read Pride and Prejudice again. So I listened to it on audio, and the narrator was Rosamund Pike. I think she did a fantastic job. I went ahead and bought it because I intend to listen to it again in the future. And then after that, so we went to Arkansas for spring break, and my in-laws live on a mountain. And we got snow. We had a snowstorm, which is unexpected. And I think I've mentioned before, I'm in Texas. We don't get a lot of snow. And so we had, I mean, it was so beautiful. I took some pictures. I might insert some up here while I'm talking. But I don't usually read when I'm on vacation. I find I'm too distracted. We're doing too many things. But because it had snowed so badly, we were all inside, and I read 13 by Steve Kavanaugh. So this is actually book 4 in the Eddie Flynn series, and I didn't realize that when I started it. I don't really think it made a ton of difference. I didn't notice any big spoilers. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. But like I said, it's book 4, so you might want to start at the beginning. So Eddie Flynn is a con man. He's a grifter, and he has become a lawyer. He is a criminal defense attorney. And because of his past as a criminal, he has this very interesting outlook. His the way he handles being an attorney is not quite the way you would expect an attorney to do things. But the really, really cool thing about this book, and it says it right on the cover, is the serial killer is not on trial. He's in the jury. It was so good. When I finished this, I came home and I ordered books 1, 2, and 3 and book 5 because my library didn't have them. And they're sort of like John Grisham novels, but they're grittier. There's more action. I really love them. If you like Law and Order, sorry, my cat's making noises. If you like John Grisham, I highly recommend these, but like, I think they're better than John Grisham. So yeah, so that was my reading for, excuse me, for March. So like I said, everybody got sick at the end of March and early April. So I've barely gotten any reading done this month. I've been reading A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, but I've been reading it for like 10 days. I'm really struggling to find the time to read. But but I'm absolutely loving it. I think it's going to be one of my top 10 books for the year. And I just started a book called Dead Blondes and Bad Mothers, which is basically, it's a nonfiction book about historically and currently why men feel the need to restrict women's power, which sounds very granola and crunchy, but it's more sort of, you know, why were women limited economically, socially, politically, medically, for so long? Like, what is the reason or the emotion, the philosophy behind men's need, a man's need, not all of them, obviously, need to keep a woman, you know, just keep her down, for lack of a better term. So anyway, so those are probably going to be in my next month's wrap up, but I'm enjoying both of those. And so yeah, that was what I read in March. Please feel free to make any recommendations to me based off of the books that I enjoyed, or one of the books I didn't enjoy. If you have a recommendation that you think you have a better option than what I've tried, I'd like to hear about it. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them. And, you know, thank you for clicking on my video. And I hope to make another one of these soon. I hope I can get some reading done. Bye.